everyone, good morning to you watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne. We're looking Christmassy this morning.
We've got the tree.
Move the tree.
At last, yeah. You know, they'd bunged it over there where you can't see it. So we thought, no, so we dragged it here.
We did. We were very demanding this morning.
And it's got some hand-painted baubles, which is
yes.
So, should we take a look at today's front pages? Well, the Telegraph says that flu hospital admissions have jumped more than 40% in a week as the NHS braces for one of the worst outbreaks of the virus in recent years.
The Eye has ambulance strikes, saying the NHS is under extreme pressure as 999 calls trigger an operational crisis.
The Guardian says Rishi Sunak is undergoing pressure to negotiate with the nurses after 4 Conservative former health ministers joined the plea for a way out of the ongoing strikes.
The Mirror declares this is what compassion looks like and covers the story of 2 nurses rushing from the picket line to help a man who collapsed on the pavement.
The Times run with Prince Harry's relationship with his brother. They say it may now be damaged beyond repair after he accused the Prince of Wales of screaming and shouting at him.
And the Mail reveals battle lines were drawn yesterday between William and Harry.
Should we have a look at the inside of the papers now? Joining us this morning is Benjamin Butterworth and Liz Kershaw. As ever, thank you very much. Looking rather Christmassy and almost as though you've just come in from a cocktail party.
Well, one tries.
Yes.
The emphasis was on being warm on the way here this morning.
You certainly look warm and cosied up.
Thank you.
Let's look at the NHS crisis then. You've been looking at it in the Eye.
Yeah, it's front page and then inside the paper, double-page spread on this. The ambulance service is under pressure. Well, it's been like that for ages. And one of the reasons is the number of ambulances that are stationary outside hospital accident and emergency departments, not able to offload their patients because there's nowhere in the A&E, and there's nowhere in A&E because people are waiting there and on trolleys and in cubicles trying to get onto the wards. And more than 13,000 patients, the article says at one point, in hospital beds are medically fit to be discharged, up more than a quarter from the same time last year, but there's just nowhere for them to go. There's a chronic lack of social care. Well, quite a few homes have closed down, haven't they, during the pandemic and since. It's ridiculous that that's private sector and, it's reliance on market forces when there's a real social need for that. Well, that's one reason the ambulances. And the other is the sheer demand. I mean, this is astounding. Northwest Ambulance Service said it had 600 people waiting for an ambulance at one point. So your mum's fallen down the stairs or, your child is visibly distressed and possibly has something like meningitis, and you're waiting 600 people and around 100 ambulances queuing outside hospitals. It's just unsustainable, isn't it?
It is already.
It is.
Yeah,
without any strikes.
Without there being any strike yet.
Yeah.
Well, meanwhile, within all of this, the Express looking at the nurses' strike and saying, well, actually, senior Tories want the government to sit down with the RCN and actually get something sorted.
Yeah, so Sir Jake Berry, who was the chairman of the Conservative Party, has written in the Daily Express to say that Rishi Sunak should sit down with the Royal College of Nurses. But, I think sitting down is rather euphemistic. They were offered the nurses a 4% pay rise earlier this year. Now, we know that inflation, the amount you pay in the shops, is about 14%, and the other measurement is about 11%. And so, it's all right for him to write in the Daily Express, sit down with them, but I think they're going to need an awful lot more money to get to that point.
Well, is that why the government's refusing to sit down with them? Because they keep saying we haven't got the money. And the 19% does seem a huge increase.
Yeah, so 19% was the request, which is, that retail inflation figure plus 5%. But I think that's also partly because they've had below inflation rises in their wages since 2010. And so I don't think anyone, including Labour, as well as the Tories, thinks that 19% is a practical offer to make nurses. But it would take them back to if they'd been given inflationary rises for 12 years. And so I think they're making quite an important point there, that when the times weren't quite so bad, they weren't exactly rosy, they were getting effective pay cuts. And now when things are seriously tough, they can't pay for this. honest, a quarter of hospitals have food banks for the nurses. That's clearly not a sustainable situation.
And the nurses on the picket lines, though, are saying, look, it's not just about pay, it's also about staffing levels that are making our jobs almost impossible to do. And that's where, surely, it is ultimately the job of the Prime Minister to get somebody to sit down and just talk with them.
Yeah, exactly. But I actually think, while at the moment it's in Rishi Sunak's desk, this is a problem that we should have seen coming, because aside from not giving them inflationary rises, we have a changing population demographic. We have, and will continue to for about 10, 15 more years, have an ever bigger percentage of elderly people who get sick more frequently, who need more health care, and we don't seem to have prepared for that properly.
Can I just say, just to put things into perspective, as I was saying last week, it's not just this happening in the UK. GPs and nurses have been on strike recently in France. But one thing that I was left asking when I was watching the coverage of this yesterday, because it wasn't on any broadcast media, only a quarter of hospitals were affected. So from the screaming hysteria in the news, you'd think that all nurses had walked out. And if you looked at the list of hospitals that were actually affected, it was quite striking. So, for instance, let's look at the Red Wall, as it was called, the last election. From the Liverpool to Hull, all the hospitals in Merseyside were affected. The nurses were on strike. None in Greater Manchester. So that's Manchester, Stockport, Rochdale, Oldham, Bury, Bolton. None were affected in places like Blackpool or Blackburn. They were on strike in Leeds at the teaching hospitals, but nowhere in York or Hull, nowhere in Lincolnshire, right down the coast, Norfolk, Suffolk, Essex, Kent, the hospital where the migrants were taken to after the awful incident in the Channel the other day, Ashford, not affected by the strike. So I have to ask myself, why are 3/4 of nurses not on strike if they feel so strongly about it? It's a genuine question. And the other thing is, I had tweets yesterday, because I tweeted this list that was in one of the newspapers, who's actually on, where a hospital's affected in England. And people were saying, oh, I've got kidney cancer, Liz, and I've been for my regular treatment today. And somebody else said, our hospital, Hull Royal Infirmary, they're all working there. Somebody else said, I've just been into the hospital and the nurses there don't want to strike. They want nothing to do with this. So before we all get our knickers in a twist, can we just have some clear facts and an accurate representation of what is going on across England? Scotland's different. They're negotiating with the government, Parliament of Scotland. Wales, all but one trust is affected. Similarly in Ireland, but across England, it's very patchy. So I'm genuinely
is the media then blowing this out of proportion?
I don't think the media is. It's easy for the media to go and join a picket line, film the cars hooting as they pass. Yes, I'd like nurses to get a 20% increase, but I think the media is misrepresenting the power of this industrial action, because it's only a quarter of the union nurses that walked out.
I mean, I think one of the reasons for that is that they said that any essential or emergency care will still be covered, and so that must be a huge proportion of the nurses, and that's something they agreed to at the outset.
I'm talking about actual hospitals that are untouched, 75%. So where I live, I'm between two. So Northamptonshire Hospital Trust, that was nurses were taking strike action. Milton Keynes, no.
I mean, I think the government has clearly tried, because the report in the Daily Express says that relations have soured between the government and the nurses, the Royal College of Nurses. And I think that actually, and your poll suggests this morning regarding, I think it was the strikes with the trains, is that public support isn't really on the side of the government with this. And so, I fear that if the government isn't sitting down with them and they've had this first strike in their history, then you're probably going to have another one, which, you know, maybe more of them will go out on strike if it gets worse. And that's why I think, you know, this guy this Tory MP in the Daily Express is probably right that they need to sit down, because, you know, right now things are starting to get difficult in the NHS. In a few months, if they do this again, it's going to be even worse.
Well, if you're a non-striking nurse, get in touch this morning. GBNEWS at GBNEWS.
And why aren't you doing it? And can I just say on the railways, the people I'm very keen on trains and support the use of trains, and I'd just like to say that the people I've spoken to who support the strikes, my female friends, the biggest reason for them supporting the rail workers in strike is for their personal safety as a passenger. They don't want to see guards being scrapped. They want people in ticket offices. They want members of staff to be around. And that's the prevailing reason why they're supporting the strikes. They're not really discussing the pay. And so briefly, where I live, we've still got a hospital operating. We've got trains running to and from London. I've been on one this week, Benjamin's been on one this week, and we've got the post coming every day, even on strike days. There's less volume of post. But these strikes aren't actually very solid as far as I can see.
I was on Avanti West Coast, so it's hard to tell if they're on strike or not.
Oh dear.
Yes.
It was standing room only. I mean, they're absolutely packed, the trains that are running, aren't they?
And mine was delayed, so I got in at 2 a.m. But you know, as your guest said earlier, there's a lot of money disappearing in all these places, and I think we need some explanations. And the staff at the bottom deserve a bit more when things are so tight.
Let's have a look at the Mail. Harry and William. Liz?
Well, I was just in makeup and I was tired and it came out wrong, and I said the makeup lady said, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "Oh, I'm talking about Egon and Mary and Hagan." Harry and Meghan, and I think I'm going to stick with Egon and Mary, because I think that just about sums it up.
Does it? Yeah.
Well, I've not watched any of it. I've seen the trails. I've seen all the reportage of the content. I just put out a tweet last night saying, me and my brother had a big row 2 weeks ago, and my dad once told me off.
Yeah.
I haven't got any black and white film footage of it, but is anybody willing to give me 80 million quid?
Yeah, and my gran just sat in the corner and let it happen.
Because who's not had those? You know, it's all it just seems so, you know, inconsequential to me. I mean, it's just, grow up.
Well, yeah, I have to say.
Grow a pair and enjoy your life in Montecito, which people can only dream of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a moment in the documentary, and I haven't watched it all because I don't want to, but there's a moment in it where Meghan and Harry are sat there, and she picks up her phone, and she goes, oh, Beyonce has just texted me. And then Harry goes, you know, faux excited, and then he says, why don't you call her? And she goes, oh no, she just says that I'm here to end generational trauma and that I'm a hero for doing it. I mean, it's so conceited and fake, and that's what frustrates me, because, you know, Meghan and Harry do have a platform to talk about and bring people on a journey about some of these issues. Of course she's faced racism. Of course there are things in this country that we don't recognise about ourselves that it might be better if we did. And they're throwing that all away to be these sort of faux saccharine celebrities in the US. And that's why I think polling both there and here says that they're not that popular. I mean, Obama's birthday is coming up. I don't know if you're invited, but...
oh, hang on, the phone's ringing. It's Barack himself.
That's my phone, Liz.
But Harry and Meghan have not been invited to the former
Apparently, a lot
birthday.
of their former showbizy type friends are sort of distancing themselves slightly from it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Howard Stern, who's a big liberal radio host, was rather disparaging about the first 3 episodes of the documentary. And so that says that, you know, it's easy to be scared about the damage this is doing, and it is doing some damage to Britain's reputation. But I don't think people are falling for it in the way that you might have your worst fears.
Well, let's hope not. Let's have a look at The Guardian, should we? More claims of bullying.
Yes, this is interesting. In Dominic Raab's office, Benjamin. Because obviously there have been this sort of cloud of, you know, did he, didn't he, is he not a bully in any way? But now they've done a sort of survey within his own department.
They have, and Ministry of Justice and a third, 10 of 33 staff, say that they've been on the receiving end of bullying in this survey, which was leaked to The Guardian.
Not by him, necessarily.
No, just a sort of culture within the office.
But there are 8 personal formal complaints against him. So, you may be able to, those numbers may add up to some degree. And I think that, he says he refutes it and says he's going to fight these complaints. But I think, he's clearly something has arrived if 8 people have made formal complaints. And it's not really in civil servants' usual nature to do this. It seems a bit familiar at the moment because you had one against Priti Patel as well, and you had them against Gavin Williamson, who was every job under the sun. But yeah, Dominic Raab has now had this come out, and look, he denies it. But I think that, this suggests that maybe he's not the easiest person to work with, to put it politely.
Or it's part of a concerted effort to get rid of democratically elected people, going back to Boris and several others that you just mentioned, Benjamin, in between. Let's just...
It's one of those slurs that once it's said against
Yeah.
you, it's very difficult to disprove, and it may gather momentum of its own.
All I can say is that he's a 6th dan at karate.
Is it?
He could kill you with one blow. So I think if he shouted at you or threw a tomato, you got off lightly.
But I think we should be bothered by bullying complaints of people of such high office because, you need the best interests and the best quality discussions between these people in order to run the country and help the rest.
But they're going to be tough, aren't they? They're going to have to be tough people to do the job.
Yeah, but look, I just don't believe that senior civil servants aren't tough themselves. I think they know the difference between bullying and toughness. And look, clearly I don't know the details of the claims like you don't. But I think this is pretty serious. You heard them against Gordon Brown. You remember back when he was Prime Minister,
Yes.
There was a massive story where a anti-bullying charity had complaints against him throwing a mobile phone. So, it's not unique to the Tories, but I do think it's not good governance. And often it's women on the receiving end of it as well. It can be particularly targeted. I don't know about Dominic Raab, but, the misogyny comes into it. And I think these are things we should be bothered about because in no workplace, whether it's Downing Street or anywhere else.
Well, the biggest bully I ever encountered in BBC management was a woman. So it's not unique to men.
No, but the trouble is, if it's a boss of a department, you can create a culture where other little bullies come up as well. It enables bullying, and that's wrong, isn't it? It has to be stopped.
Now, what's the Telegraph saying about social media, Liz, of which you are a proponent?
Well, it's a bit of a non-story, in my opinion. It's a front page little box, and then it goes on to page 2. So parents will no longer have the onus upon them to monitor their kids' activity online and to filter things out and block stuff. The social media companies will be responsible and could face heavy fines if children are subjected to stuff on self-harm or sexual consent, etc. So the big proviso caveat is, how do you work out how old somebody is? And so I'm ploughing through this trying to find out by what magic they're going to be able to tell if somebody's under 18 or under 16, and they haven't got an answer yet.
But you're not meant to be able to... The thing was, back in the day, you were not meant to join Twitter till you were 16, were you?
No,
Was that the...
But they just ask you, and you can I'll just finish this. It says... Andy Burrows, former head of online safety at the NSPCC, warned it would depend on tough age verification where standards have yet to be spelled out. So how do you work out? What's to stop a 12-year-old going on and clicking I'm over 18?
Yeah, but we should aim to put your credit card details in.
Well,
something.
I'm not sure.
Do you have to pay to see how to top yourself? I don't think you do you?
Well, no, but I don't say you need to pay anything, but just to prove you've got a credit card.
Oh, right,
You'd have to be 18.
Right.
But then I think that the age that Facebook, for example, says is 13, and I think Instagram is the same, under its code of service. And so, I think there are plenty of parents who know that their kids have these social media platforms before then because they're under an awful lot of pressure from their peers at school. But I think some of this could be solved by parents feeling confident to not let their kids get those profiles. Lots of them set them up for their newborn babies and stuff, and posting everything from day one, which I'm sorry, but all babies look the same, and it's like the dog pics. I don't need to see it.
What do you do about dogs that have Facebook pages and stuff?
Wow.
How do you verify a dog's age?
Ban them.
And is it in dog years or human years?
Well, I'd just ban them. I think it's absolutely crackers. I'd quite happily see social media stopped altogether, but that'll never happen.
No, that is.
Even though I enjoy, I love it when people get into it. But I just think there's probably more negative than positive on it, ultimately.
The genie's out of the bottle now. You'll never stop it.
No.
But, I went through my Instagram and people that were sort of very attractive, conventionally attractive, who I followed, but didn't know in real life, I unfollowed them all on purpose because you end
You're
up...
just following people you like the look of.
Well, I think I was, yeah.
That's
it just happens
that's
by
a bit
accident.
creepy anyway.
But no, like models and celebrities you like, it's not that unusual. But people that just sort of, men I'm talking about, that will post gym photos all the time. And I unfollowed them because I realised it's just not good for your psyche, for your idea of the world, to see ridiculous and often heavily doctored images of how other people look. Because I don't look like that, and chances are they don't even look like that.
You tell yourself that they're heavily doctored. You keep telling yourself
I
that.
tell you what about Henry Cavill then? Because...
It's a job.
Yeah, he's out of a job, and they're saying he might actually be being lined up to be the next 007.
Yes, Henry Cavill is a man that
follow him?
Yeah, I wouldn't want to see him on my Instagram. I'd feel terribly insecure. So he has been Superman for some years. And he announced recently, at the approval of the studio that makes it, that he'll be back as Superman. And now, awkwardly, he had to take to Instagram to say he's no longer got the job. It's unclear why. He put sort of a humble explanation that, people change their minds and it's been a privilege to be a part of Superman. The question is, has he just been made James Bond? And you can't be 007 and Superman, of course. So maybe the cat's out of the bag, but it's very hard to tell.
Would he make a good Bond, do you think?
I think, he went up for Bond before, didn't he?
Oh, I didn't know that.
He went up for Bond before, and they said, the actors, they always, when you audition for Bond, I can't think what it is.
Did you do that?
But you
Is that how you know?
that's how I know, yeah. You always have to, it's always the same scene from donkey's years ago.
Oh.
Which involves walking out of the shower in a towel. And they said,
no,
yes,
really?
no, this is true. And they said to Henry Cavill when he did it, it was quite a few years ago, yeah, you're looking a bit chubby.
Oh, I know the one you mean. Scottish fella Bond did it first, didn't he?
Sean Connery.
Sean Connery.
Oh, yes,
Sean
yeah.
Connery.
So he said,
I was
yeah,
gonna say,
you're looking a bit chubby, and so he didn't get the part.
I thought you meant that. My favourite
There's
scene.
no hope for the rest of us, though.
It would be the explanation for him suddenly being dropped from Superman, wouldn't it?
It would, although, these big studios, there's so much money and ego at play, I think it can be hard to tell.
So I remember when Pierce Brosnan was first offered Bond, he was doing Remington Steel, and they wouldn't release him. And, and that's why Timothy Dalton, I think, was
Oh, I liked
chosen.
Timothy Dalton.
And then, as soon as Pierce Brosnan was released from Remington Steel a couple of years later, they gave him Bond, and that's how it happened for him. So it came round again. He got a second chance.
Well, Henry Cavill would be a great Bond, actually.
He would.
So.
Okay. Well, you never know. Watch this space.
Yeah.
We'll have to ask Stephanie. She might know a bit
She
later
might know, yes. All right, thank you, you two. Good to see you this morning. We'll catch up with you a little bit later on.